Arthur's family truth. I was halfway down the hallway when the door across from my son's apartment opened. Earl stepped out and grabbed my arm. Not hard, just enough to stop me. He didn't raise his voice. He said, "Don't go in yet." I didn't ask why. I didn't move. Because the way he said it told me something inside that apartment had already gone wrong. And whatever it was, I was about to walk straight into it. There was a folder in my bag I hadn't opened in 2 weeks. I didn't reach for it. I thought I knew exactly what I was walking into. I didn't. My name is Arthur Harmon. I'm 61, retired civil engineer, Dayton, Ohio. And what happened behind that door started long before that hallway. It didn't start in that hallway. It started 2 years earlier. My son Liam is 33, software engineer. After college, he moved to Indianapolis for work, about 2.5 hours from the house where he grew up. We'd settled into a good rhythm. Sunday phone calls, visits every couple of months. He's a quiet guy, thinks before he speaks, means every word when he does. He got all of that from his mother. He called me on a Thursday night about 2 years ago. That was unusual. Liam's a Sunday caller. When he rings on a weekday, something's up. He said he'd met someone, said it was serious, said he wanted me to meet her before things went any further because my opinion mattered to him. I was standing in my kitchen holding the phone, looking out at the empty backyard, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a while, hard to name exactly. Something close to hope, I guess. She had a quick smile, the kind of confidence that filled a room before you understood it. I told myself I liked her, and I kept telling myself that, but something was off. I couldn't name it then. It was like looking at a painting from across the room looks right. But when you get closer, something in it bothers you and you can't say exactly what. Nothing she said was wrong. Nothing she did was wrong. I just felt it. Liam asked me afterward what I thought. I said she seemed great because she did, but I also knew my own situation. 3 years alone, Liam was the main person in my life, and I knew a new woman would rearrange things. I assumed the feeling was about me. I factored it in and told myself I was being fair to her. 7 months later, they were engaged. He called me on a Thursday again. Same day of the week. I've since figured out he needs a weeknight to deliver big news, some buffer between the announcement and the weekend, so things can settle. He sounded genuinely happy. The way he sounded at 14 when he aced a physics test. I said all the right things. I meant most of them. The wedding was small. 30 people in a garden outside Indianapolis, a Saturday in June. Earl Grady, Liam's best friend since their first week of college, was the best man. He gave a toast that made half the room cry. My sister Gloria drove up from Cincinnati and sat next to me in the second row. I watched Liam say his vows, voice steady, eyes full, and I thought, whatever I feel about this, whatever that small, unnameable thing is, it doesn't matter. He loves her. That's enough. I drove home telling myself it was enough. For the first year, things looked fine on the surface. I visited Indianapolis 4 or 5 times. Always called ahead. Never stayed more than 2 nights. Nicole was a good hostess. Apartment was clean, well furnished, nicer than I expected on 2 salaries where one of them traveled constantly. Liam seemed happy. Tired sometimes, quieter than usual, but fine in the basic way. When I asked how things were going, he said good. He always said good. I noticed small things, but didn't dwell on them. Nicole had mentioned once early on that she had a daughter from a previous relationship, young girl, lived with her father in Nashville. She brought it up once, briefly, and never again. I thought that was unusual but didn't say anything. It wasn't my place. Gloria was the first one to say something out loud. She came with me to Indianapolis in February, 8 months into the marriage, for Liam's birthday. We took them to dinner at a steakhouse downtown. Gloria sat across from Nicole the whole evening with that particular stillness she's had for 65 years. That watching thing she does. On the drive home 2.5 hours south, dark outside, she said, "That woman counts every word your son says before she decides whether to agree with it." I told her she was reading too much into things. She said maybe in a tone that made clear she didn't believe that for a second. I pushed it aside. Told myself Gloria had always been suspicious of people she didn't know well. Told myself Nicole just had a strong personality. Told myself Liam was fine, he said good every Sunday and his voice sounded like himself. I pushed it aside for 3 more months, then Liam called me on a Wednesday night. That had never happened before, not once. I picked up and I already knew something was wrong before he said a word. He asked if I still had the contact information for the attorney who handled Linda's estate. Said he needed to ask about some paperwork. Nothing serious. His voice was careful in that specific way voices get when someone is trying very hard to sound casual. I gave him the number. I didn't sleep well that night. 2 weeks after that Wednesday call, Liam phoned on Sunday like normal. Sounded fine, said things were good. Didn't mention the attorney. I didn't ask. Earl called me on a Tuesday afternoon. We hadn't spoken since the wedding. I almost let it go to voicemail. I didn't. He didn't start with Liam. He said, "I don't know how to say this." Then he stopped. I waited. I think something's wrong with him. I didn't answer. He kept going. "I've seen him twice this month. Lunch, just the two of us." Another pause. "He's lost weight." I could hear him thinking about what to say next. Not just that. He keeps checking his phone, even when it's face down. I walked to the window, didn't look at anything. He starts a sentence. Earl exhaled quietly. Then he stops, like he just remembered he shouldn't finish it. That was when I sat down. Earl said, "I've known him 10 years. He's acting like someone who thinks he's done something wrong." A longer pause. "I don't think he has. Neither of us said anything after that. We didn't need to." I drove up that Friday, got there around 4 in the afternoon. Liam met me at the elevator. The second I saw him in that hallway, I understood exactly what Earl had meant on the phone. He'd lost weight 15 pounds, maybe more, and there was something in the way he was standing. A slight forward curve to his shoulders, like a man who'd been bracing for something for so long he'd forgotten he was doing it. He hugged me, held on a beat longer than usual. Diane called me on a Monday morning. I sat down before I picked up. I don't know why, I just did. She didn't start with numbers. She said, "There's another account." I didn't speak. "It's in your son's name." That didn't make sense. He's listed as a co-holder. I looked at the table. But he didn't open it, a pause. He didn't sign anything. I felt my hand tighten on the phone. Money's been moving through it. Not from her salary, from somewhere else. I asked where. She didn't answer right away. Then she said a name. Roy Dalton. I didn't recognize it. Liam did. When I told him, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said she mentioned him once. Years ago, Diane kept going. The money didn't stay in the account. It moved. Legal fees, settlements. She paused. As distance. I didn't ask from what. I already knew. She said your son's name made it clean. That was the word she used. Clean. I wrote it down. Didn't realize I had picked up a pen. The total wasn't the first thing she told me. It came last. Just under 68,000. I looked at the number. It didn't belong. This hadn't started recently. It had been there from the beginning. I drove home Sunday evening. I didn't turn the radio on. I called Gloria from the car and told her everything. There was a long silence on the line. Then she said, "I knew." Not triumphantly, just quietly. The way you say something when you wished with everything in you that you'd been wrong. I spent the next 3 weeks doing something I had never done in my life. I investigated. I'm not a detective. I'm a retired civil engineer from Dayton, Ohio. But I spent 40 years reading technical documents and finding the one number in 500 that didn't belong. Some skills transfer better than you'd think. First thing I did was call Howard Briggs, the attorney who handled Linda's estate. I explained the situation as plainly as I could. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he walked me through what to look for and gave me the name of a forensic accountant named Diane Caldwell. He said she handled exactly this kind of work and that she was good at it. I called Diane the next morning. She was direct, no nonsense. She asked me what documentation Liam could get her access to without tipping Nicole off. I called Liam that evening and told him what we were doing. He went quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Okay," just that one word, but it had about 30 different things packed inside it. Over the next 10 days, Liam quietly photographed 3 months of bank statements, credit card records, and anything else Diane had told him to look for. He did it from his office, emailed everything to her from his work account on a Thursday afternoon. While he was doing that, I did something on my own end that turned out to matter. I asked Liam to send me a copy of Nicole's work travel calendar, the one she kept on their shared household calendar app. Then I sat down with the bank statements side by side. The pattern was right there. Every single one of the larger withdrawals, anything over $100, $500, happened on days when Nicole was supposedly traveling for work. Bloomington, Fort Wayne, South Bend. Days when Liam was at the office and she had the apartment to herself. I wrote it all down in a list and sent it to Diane. She called me on a Monday morning, 6 days after Liam had sent her the documents. I sat down before I picked up. I don't know why, just knew I should be sitting. The number from the joint account withdrawals was around $18,000, consistent with what Liam had tracked in his notebook. But that wasn't what Diane was calling about. She had found a second account. It had been opened in both Liam's name and Nicole's name, meaning Liam was technically listed as a co-holder. But he had never signed anything to authorize it, never been told it existed. Into that account, over 12 months, had flowed a series of transfers from a separate account entirely, an account that was not Nicole's salary, not any account Liam recognized. Diane had traced it back 2 more days of work to a man in Nashville named Roy Dalton. Liam knew the name immediately when I told him. Nicole had mentioned Roy Dalton once, early in their relationship, said he was a former employer, said they hadn't spoken in years. That was not true. Roy Dalton was currently under federal investigation for tax fraud and commercial insurance fraud. The transfers from his account into the hidden account, the one in Liam's name, had been used, among other things, to pay legal fees and settlement costs connected to that federal investigation. The money had been routed through an account tied to Liam's name and clean credit record to put distance between Dalton and the payments. Liam hadn't signed anything, hadn't known anything, but his name was on the account. Diane put it plainly, your son's identity and financial record were being used as a conduit. That's what she needed when she married him. The total across both streams, the joint account withdrawals and the hidden account activity, came to just under $68,000. I sat with that number for a long time after I hung up. Then I called Howard Briggs. He laid out Liam's options clearly. A civil filing could freeze the disputed accounts and force the question of where the money came from into a formal proceeding. He said the documentation Diane had put together was solid, formatted, specifically to hold up in a legal context. He said Liam needed to move carefully, but he needed to move over the next 2 weeks. Liam did everything Howard told him to do, quietly without tipping anything off. He moved his personal documents to his office. He opened a new bank account in his name only. He met with Howard in person and understood exactly where he stood. Then, after several long phone calls with me and 1 long call with Earl, he decided he was going to confront Nicole directly. He wanted it on record that he had given her the chance to explain herself before the legal process locked everything in. He asked me to come. He asked Earl too. Earl said yes without any hesitation. I drove up on a Thursday evening, aiming to arrive by 7. Nicole knew I was coming. Liam had told her I was stopping by on my way to a weekend in Fort Wayne, plausible enough that she hadn't questioned it. The plan was simple. All 3 of us would be there when she got home from work. Howard had advised Liam on exactly what to say and what not to say. I parked in the lot at 6:50, took the elevator up, started walking down that hallway with a bag in one hand and 2.5 hours of rehearsed words in my head. That's when the door across the hall opened. Earl stepped out. He'd gotten there first. He'd been waiting across the hall because he needed to tell me something before I went in. His face told me everything had already changed. She's not there, he said. She left this afternoon. Liam came home from work and she was gone. Most of her things, and he's not doing well. He paused. She also wiped the entire text history on their shared phone plan. I set my bag down on the hallway floor. How long ago? He called me about an hour ago. He's okay. He's not hurt, but she left a letter. I went in. Liam was sitting on the floor of the living room, back against the couch, knees up, hands loose in his lap. He wasn't crying. He was somewhere past that, or not there yet, some dry, quiet place in between. He was holding his wedding ring in his right hand, turning it slowly. The apartment looked mostly the same, except certain things were gone. A lamp from the corner. 2 pieces of artwork off the walls. The small, decorative things that had always been hers. Their absence made the room feel different, emptier than the missing items could account for. I sat down on the floor next to him. Earl came in behind me and sat on the couch without saying anything. None of us spoke for a few minutes. Then Liam handed me the letter. 1 page, handwritten. She was sorry. She'd never meant to hurt him. She'd been in a difficult financial situation when they met. One she'd been ashamed to tell him about, and she'd made choices she now regretted. She hoped someday he'd understand that she had cared about him even if her actions hadn't shown it. She was going somewhere to figure things out. No mention of Roy Dalton. No mention of $68,000. No mention of the account opened in Liam's name that Howard was now going to spend considerable time untangling. I folded the letter and set it on the coffee table. I looked at my son and said, I should have done this sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. He looked at me. I felt it from the beginning, I said. That first Sunday dinner, something was off and I knew it. But I told myself it was about me, about grief, about not wanting to share you. Some of it was that, but some of it wasn't, and I should have looked harder sooner. I'm sorry. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I felt it too. That was all either of us needed to say about it. Earl had brought a bottle of whiskey, which was exactly right. We ordered food that none of us ate much of. We talked about the practical things first. Howard, the filing timeline. What Liam needed to do Monday morning. Then gradually we talked about the less practical things. Old stories about Liam and Earl from college. Things Linda used to say. The dog from 2 doors down that Liam had always wanted to steal. We sat there until well past midnight. 3 men on the floor in the couch of a half-empty apartment, and it was the least alone I'd felt in a long time. The legal process that followed took 14 months. I won't pretend it was easy. It involved Howard, it involved Diane, and it eventually involved a civil filing that froze the disputed accounts. Nicole contested everything through her own attorney for the first 4 months. Then she stopped contesting. The arrangement with Roy Dalton was what Howard called structured misdirection. Nicole had been cycling funds from Dalton's operation through accounts tied to Liam's name, clean credit, no flags, no prior legal history, exactly what Dalton needed to put distance between his money and the federal investigators tracking it. The federal case against Dalton eventually confirmed everything Diane had found. Nicole agreed to a settlement, $45,000 repaid over 4 years, and full cooperation with the federal investigation. Liam got the apartment. His accounts came back clean. His name was cleared. He didn't get back the 14 months he'd spent in that marriage. Didn't get back the weight he'd lost or the particular kind of trust that takes a long time to rebuild once it's been used against you. But he got other things. He started calling more, not just Sundays, Wednesdays, sometimes Thursday mornings, the occasional Saturday when he was out running and just wanted to talk. We went to 3 baseball games that first summer. Columbus twice, Cleveland once. I watched him come back to himself gradually, not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly, week by week, until one day I realized I was hearing his real laugh again on the phone, and not the careful version he'd been using for over a year. Earl drove down to my house twice that first winter. No occasion, just dinner, a football game, the same room. I was grateful for him in a way I had trouble saying out loud, so I said it the only way I knew how. I cooked whatever he liked and I never missed his calls. Gloria got more phone calls from me too. I told her she'd been right. She said she wished she hadn't been. Then she said, but you were right about why you doubted yourself. It was both things at once. That's one of the truest things anyone has ever said to me. Last spring, Liam came down for a weekend and we put a garden in the backyard. Nothing elaborate. Tomatoes, a couple rows of something else he wanted to try. We worked all of Saturday with the radio going, talked about nothing important and everything important, the way you only can when your hands are busy and you don't have to look directly at each other. The dog from 2 doors down sat at the fence the whole afternoon watching us, hoping we'd drop something. He told me that weekend he'd been on a couple of dates. Nothing serious yet. He said it carefully, the way he says the things that matter. I said good, and I meant it completely. That evening, we sat on the back porch after dinner and watched the sun go down. After a while, Liam said, "You know what I keep thinking about? Earl standing in that hallway. What if he'd been 5 minutes later and you'd already gone in?" I sat with that for a second. Then I said, "We would have figured it out anyway. Would have taken longer, but we would have." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think that's right." The sun finished going down. The dog gave up on us and wandered off. We went inside, washed the dishes, watched the end of a game neither of us had a stake in. The house was quiet in the good way, the way it hadn't been in a long time. If you're sitting with a feeling right now that you can't quite name something about a person in your life that bothers you, but you can't point to a single thing, I want to say this. The feeling is information, not proof. Not permission to blow everything up, but it's not nothing either. Don't talk yourself out of it just because you've already made a list of your own flaws and decided the feeling must be one of them. Look carefully, ask the question, get the documents, make the call. Do it sooner than I did. A con artist doesn't need you to trust her completely. She just needs you to doubt yourself enough to do nothing. That's the whole game. That's the most important thing I know how to say. Arthur Harmon, 61, Dayton, Ohio. If this story hit close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've been through something like this, Drop it in the comments. You're not the only one. Subscribe more stories below. Watch the next one.